Today, I'm very pleased to welcome a very special guest to this meeting, Thasunda Brown Duckett, President and CEO of TIAA. With this historic appointment, Thasunda is the first woman to head the financial services firm and the second Black woman to lead a Fortune 500 company. As TIAA's CEO, Thasunda leads a company whose mission is defined by financial inclusion and opportunity, goals and values she has upheld throughout her career. Thasunda joined TIAA after serving as Chief Executive Officer of Chase Consumer Banking, where she oversaw a banking network with more than $600 billion in deposits and 50,000 employees. Previously, she was the CEO of Chase Auto Finance and National Retail Sales Executive for Chase Mortgage Banking, where she managed 4,000 mortgage bankers. She serves on the board of Nike Incorporated, Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights, Sesame Workshop, National Medal of Honor Museum, Economic Club of New York, University of Houston Board of Visitors, and Dean's Advisory Board for the Baylor University School of Business. So she's no stranger to higher education. Thasunda founded the Rosie and Otis Brown Foundation in honor of her parents to recognize and reward people who use ordinary means to empower and uplift their communities in extraordinary ways. She's passionate about helping communities of color close achievement gaps in wealth creation, educational outcomes, and career success. Interviewing Thasunda is MaryFrances McCourt, Vice President for Finance and Treasurer at the University of Pennsylvania and a NACUBO board member. MaryFrances, the floor is yours.
Thasunda, you're widely recognized as an exceptionally dynamic and inspirational leader with a purpose-driven vision. From your previous role at Chase, we know you bring invaluable experience leading and growing large, complex businesses, setting and executing strategy, improving client experience, and attracting and developing talent. Equally important, you are deeply mission-oriented with values that reflect those of higher education, including a passion for inclusion and empowerment. Thank you for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you here. So let's dive in. As we begin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, the path of your career, and what attracted you to becoming CEO of TIAA?
Wow. Well, first, let me just say thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm very much looking forward to the dialogue. With respect to your question, so a little bit about me. I have to go all the way back. I was born in Rochester, New York. I grew up in Arlington, Texas. I am the only girl with two brothers. And I graduated, as the bio said, from the University of Houston with degrees in finance and marketing and my MBA from Baylor. Some important milestones that I would highlight is a program called En-ROADS. En-ROADS was my disruptor. And for those of you who don't know, En-ROADS is a program that really focuses on giving opportunities to talented minority students to have exposure into corporate America. Without a program like En-ROADS, we would not be here having this conversation. As the bio said, I worked at Fannie Mae and most recently at JP Morgan Chase. With respect to TIAA, simply wow. To have an opportunity to be the leader of a company that dates back over 100 years with the founding of Carnegie and understanding the importance of those who serve to be able to retire in dignity. There's a few parallel paths. One, we share shared values. When I think about TIAA and who I am, I'm highly mission oriented, as you highlighted. My mother is a retired educator. My father worked for over 40 years at a company, and to have the daughter tell the father that he was not ready to retire hit a chord. And to now have an opportunity to lead an organization to ensure that everyone, specifically in higher education and in healthcare and those who work in the nonprofits, not-for-profit sector, have that same opportunity is personal for me as well. When I think about TIAA being a leader, it's a leader when we think about preparing folks for retirement, when I think about the leadership role in Naveen, but most importantly, what really attracted me to TIAA is the deep roots of making an impact. And that's who I am, and that's what I'm looking forward to doing as the CEO of this great enterprise.
Thank you. And it's funny, I see that with TIAA, and I had noted here the history of serving those who do good in the world. I mean, that says it all. And you mentioned Carnegie as well, and I wrote down the quote from the TIAA site: "No man becomes rich unless he enriches others."
Absolutely.
So that alignment. Well, you made this transition during an incredible time in history. What are your observations about higher ed in the first 90 days?
Wow, a lot. I mean, not just from, the first 90 days, but being a mother of 4, very much interested in the future of higher education and the resiliency through this time period. So in terms of my direct observations in this role, I focused on 3 things: listening, learning, and engaging. And when I think about my observations, it's really a perspective that comes through the lens of my team, the lens of speaking with plan consultants, and the lens of speaking with presidents of universities, as well as CFOs and folks in the Department of Benefits. One, I would say resiliency. To think about the work, the agility that is required navigating through a pandemic. It's one that I can deeply relate to, having to lead a team of over 40,000 people that went to work every day during the pandemic. The agility that higher ed was able to do, going from fully in person, some were online, but moving virtually. My observations are also with the backdrop of what it meant to students and the questions that still remain in terms of students that may have been accepted. Will they show up? What's the impact of a hybrid environment? How did the students really fare? That's top of mind for universities. Also the safety, navigating back. Mm-hmm. So it was getting them out and continuing to pursue their education remotely. But then how do you get them back safely in a sustained manner when we're still navigating a pandemic? And then the last 2 points I would highlight is the faculty. The agility and really listening to the worries and the concerns of the faculty and those who work at universities is definitely top of mind as you think about retaining talent, as you think about recruiting talent, as you think about continuing to understand what are some of the concerns and getting back to work in a college setting, or how do you continue to make sure you have that agility remotely. And then lastly, the financial strain. When you think about the resources that were required and are still required with a lot of the uncertainty, there's definitely a lot that's top of mind. But I would also say there's this unlock, as I like to say, to think about how to move forward in a way that's been accelerated as a result of the environment that we're in. And so I think there's also optimism as we think about what is the future of education and how do we continue to be relevant to our youth, to those that are pursuing higher education, in a way that can prepare them for the job opportunities in the markets that's ahead of us.
Yeah, love that optimism and relevancy. It's top of mind for me.
Absolutely.
As you know, we're here today with higher ed chief financial officers, chief business officers, and other finance leaders. You lead a company managing 1.5 trillion, much of which are their institutions' retirement assets. What would you want all of us to know about TIAA and how it manages these assets, especially given the uncertainty around markets and inflation?
Well, first, I want to say thank you. Thank you for entrusting us to be able to manage your dollars, your employees' dollars, and do it with excellence. So a whole lot of gratitude. What I would want everyone to know is clearly we have this backdrop. We know that interest rates are continuing to remain low. We know that there's a lot of conversation around inflation and what that means. Is it a spike? Is it here to stay? What that will do to the economy. Still questions as early as today on the topic with the Fed. When you think about the impact to institutions and knowing that this pandemic is global, and what does that mean with now the Delta variants? And then when you think about the markets, the stock market is going to continue to be choppy. When you think about the flight to quality, I think plays to our strength. And so when I think about TIAA, when I think about everyone who's on this Zoom call, I would say, one, you can be confident that you have a company that has navigated through all cycles and has continued to pay out 100%, which is over $500 billion since 1918. So that the quality of how we manage and invest our money, your money, is one that we can stand behind. And we've done that consistently. I think you should also know that all of us, all 15,000 plus, wake up every day with this shared mission. And I think that's important because we are uniquely focused to ensuring that we deliver throughout the cycle, through all the ups and the downs, all the volatility. We will be here and we will stay here. And then lastly, I would say I want you to know that we are here because we know it's not just about the investments and how it's performing. It's about listening to understanding your needs and making sure that you know that you have a partner that wants to understand what are your concerns, from diversity, equity and inclusion, to ESG, to the performance, to our products, and making sure that we're having real conversations that can continue to be accretive to the outcomes that we're aligned on.
Great, thank you so much. Great answer. Transitioning a bit, diversity and inclusion are issues top of mind across the country and the world. Higher education has a lot of work to do across the board, and people of color and women are underrepresented in finance roles still. How is TIAA handling inclusion, diversity, and equity, and what are some ideas that you would have on how to close the gap?
Well, as you know, this is personal for me. And to be a part of a company who has anchored on diversity, equity, and inclusion before it was such a buzzword or buzzwords, I think is something that is encouraging. In terms of what we are doing, I do think it's important that we model the behavior we aspire. And one of the things that we anchor on, which I love, is be the change. And be the change is about what we can do as a company, as an enterprise, structurally and systemically. And it's also about what we can do as individuals and being able to share all the things that we are doing, but also engaging with our associates to say, how can you be the change? So some of the things that we are doing, and I will anchor this in terms of an opportunity to continue the dialogue with you and all of the members. One is something that we're partnering on together with the CBO profile. I do think what gets measured gets done. And being able to partner with you all to establish that baseline so that we know where we are and be able to think through ways that we can measure to get better is important. Two, and probably one of the most important things, is the mindset. So what can we all do? First, we have to decide it's important. We have to decide. And I do think it is a decision. If we believe that talent is created equally and opportunity is not, then the first step is the mindset. The second step is to be able to have the metrics. And I'm really excited to be able to partner with you all in providing more resources and tools around measurement. But even inside TIAA, we're measuring. And when I say measure, it's not looking at just people of color, for example, or women and people of color in aggregate. You have to just aggregate the data and say, how are we doing with women at all levels, across all areas? How are we doing for African Americans across all levels, Latinx, Asian, et cetera? Because when you disaggregate the data, you will see differences, and that will allow you to understand where you have to focus. And then the last thing that I would say, drivers are important to outcome. So it's one thing to say we want X in terms of representation, but the most important question, just like in business, are what are the drivers that will yield the outcome? And so I would encourage all of us, and what we're doing at TIAA, and what I would say for all of you, is be passionate about understanding what are the drivers. And what I mean by that is if we say we need to do more with respect to women representation, the drivers may be working with like our business resource group and saying, am I as an executive that may not be where I believe I should be, am I leading that resource group? Am I engaging in women networks? Am I engaging in making sure that I'm vocal and I'm out there so that I can do my part to attract the talent? And then how do you retain the talent? And I think it's not just about the diversity or the recruitment, it is about the retention in order to be the change. So there's a lot that we are doing here at TIAA, from leveraging our institute, from disaggregating the data, putting it in our business reviews and having real conversation. I believe in individual scorecards. How are you performing over time? Maybe you inherited some great results, or maybe you don't have the great results, but you're working towards it. But most importantly, what gets measured gets done. And we have to have a mindset shift. And that is what we are doing at TIAA. And I feel like we've made great progress, but we know the job is never done. And we have to get better every day and not lose sight of the opportunity to just attract and retain the very best talent.
Yeah, and I think that emphasis on the word retain is such a
Yes.
big one. You know, we're always talking diversity, inclusion, and belonging. You know,
Yes.
bring people in, but do they feel like they belong? And I think that plays into the retention as well. So important. Looking forward, what are your thoughts on leadership as we navigate this new normal? And as I look at our industry, especially higher education, one of the last industries that had been unmarked by dramatic change, and were forced to change virtually overnight. And you touched on that a little bit at the beginning. But as we look at that leadership going forward, what are your thoughts there?
Wow. I mean, what I would say in terms of the importance of leadership is it's the leadership environment that we're in now. It's surround sound is the best way I would say it. And what I mean by that, it's about being a leader and understanding the broader issues that are facing our country or the university or the people who we identify as our target audience, which would be the students, for example. I think it's important to understand what do they care about. We know climate is a big deal. We know social justice is a big deal. Gender equity is a big deal. As leaders, it's important that we get proximate to these issues, that we don't proxy it away, that we lead from the front. We are vulnerable. We may say we don't have all the answers, but we're willing to engage. And I think that is so important. I do think agility is critical, and clearly higher education and so many companies, including TIAA, had to be agile in navigating uncertain times. I do think transformation is all around us as well as disruption. And I think it's important for leaders to be looking around the corner, to not just look at your competition in its traditional sense, but how are you looking at the competition in a much broader sense, I think is important. And lastly, I do think that it's very important to always think about how are you defining success and how is that evolving and changing over time? And whether that's in how do you define someone being a great employee? How do you define whether they're in the office all the time or working at home? I think there's ways that we have to challenge, you know, what was defined 10, 15, or even a year and a half ago may need to be calibrated to the environment that we're in today. But I do think you have to continue to be positive. I think you have to continue to understand that the better days are ahead of us, not behind us. And in the midst of uncertainty, that's when the greatest innovation can happen. And lastly, I would say, and this is so important when it comes to the people, we have to make sure that we earn it every day in terms of the value that we're providing. And I think that's important for leaders to understand the value that we're providing for our employees. And when I think about higher ed, clearly understanding the benefits package, understanding the resources that they need to be successful, all of those things I think are so important because people want to know what you stand for. People want to understand the value that you can bring so that they can ultimately have a great life, whether that's while they're in academia or in healthcare or even through retirement. They want to be able to have that security. That's what I think leadership is all about, which is something that's been true prior to this environment that we're navigating today.
You know what, it's funny, aside from our love of hot pink, I'm starting to feel like we were brought up with the same principles. You know, that's something, earn it every day.
Yes.
Dear to my heart. Well, so we have just a tad bit of time. So here's an off the cuff question. But you've also been, used the words optimism and positivity several times as you've spoken. How do you keep that up day in and day out as we've navigated through this? People could get mired in negativity, but as
Absolutely.
a leader, exuding that day in and day out at the front of, this very, very, very large organization.
Yeah. My father, Otis Brown, would tell me all the time, it's okay to have bad moments, just not bad days. And so I would say that, yes, there are some bad moments that we are currently experiencing, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's the uncertainty, whether it's mental health, whether it's social justice or climate. But I do think joy comes in the morning. And I do believe that our best days are ahead of us. You have to remember, I stand on the shoulders of giants. I stand on shoulders that enter the halls of corporate America as cooks, janitors, and secretaries. You fast forward, here I am having this conversation with this phenomenal organization. Our best days are ahead. And I would say I'm raising 4 kids as young as 5. I have to be optimistic because I am part of the accountability in making sure that we are paving a brighter future for them. So I think that's what's important. And when you get to surround yourself with people every day with the shared mission and a shared purpose, which is what I get to do at TIAA, you can't help but be joyful, because who we serve every day are serving others.
Yeah.
And that's a big responsibility for us. And that's something that we should wake up every day with a smile on our face and a whole lot of gratitude, with a whole lot of grit, to make sure we're doing everything to secure their financial retirement.
Another one of my favorite words, grit. And yeah, so I'll end it two comments. Yeah. So every day, we have this wellness app, and it says, "What's your mood today?" And I always have the smiley face to start the day, but ending it with what a fantastic leader you are for an institution. I'm going to repeat what I said at the beginning: serving those who did good in the world. I mean, that's just kind of how you ended it as well. So thank you so much for an amazing.
Well, I just want to say thank you to you. Thank you to the organization. And I have to give a shout out to all of my associates, especially my folks that engage with everyone on this call every single day. I have to say, did I know I did a good job? And the way I would know is if they're pinging them saying, we need to talk. I want to know more about what we can do together. So hopefully, they're going to be very busy on the out front of this call. But thank you for everything that you all do. It matters. And I'm looking forward to getting to see you all in person, hopefully soon.